Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So the other day I posted this video right here, basically saying that we should keep our expectations in check and match reality to what could actually happen. Essentially, I was talking about how Navi GPUs, if they came out around the $399 price point, to me that would make logical sense. All they have to do is be cheaper than their competition and offer similar performance. But to a lot of people out there, that's not good enough. And that really got me thinking, it's like, well, when did GPU prices really get so crazy to where a company would start just raising prices out of the blue like this? And I went back in time and I did a little bit of homework and I came across something rather interesting that I missed. I didn't remember it from way back when. I must have passed over this product entirely, but it happened. Now, everybody's aware of the 8800 GTX. Everybody knows how good of a card that was. It was a little bit pricey for the time, came out at $649, but its performance level was so vastly superior to everything else that came before it that people were kind of like, all right, I mean, whatever. And we're talking about a GPU that came out in late 2006. Very, very late, at the very end. Just a few months later, NVIDIA launched the GeForce 8800 Ultra. Now, this thing right here was $829 in 2007. So when we think about when did GPU prices go crazy, it was during the 8800 series. And by the way, ironically enough, this is the very first series of graphics cards that NVIDIA actually won. Up until this point, they had either tied or slightly beaten their competition, but they have never had a commanding lead in the graphics market until this point. You could argue the GeForce 256, but that was a very short-lived product, and that's because it cost a fortune for them to make. But realistically, this is the first ever time that they held the graphics performance lead, and guess what they did? They bumped graphics card prices all the way up to $829. Okay, so using our inflation calculator here, 2007 to 2019, $829. That means that GPU in today's money would be over $1,000. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like a price point that NVIDIA has been wanting to get to for a long time? Oh yeah, they've always wanted to be in that $1,000 plus mark. And this is really where it all started. The second that they gained market share or market dominance, they just started cranking up prices. Now, you might be thinking, well, what about the other generations? You know, why were there like the GTX 580? Why was that only $499? That's because AMD or ATI at the time was still competitive. They were so competitive that they had to price their GPUs accordingly. In fact, the only reason why NVIDIA kept their prices somewhat reasonable throughout the entire lifespan of their company is because they weren't the best. Or they had stiff enough competition that kept them in line because the other companies weren't overcharging people. If you look back at the Radeon 9700, the first time a GPU manufacturer had an overwhelming advantage. This was the first time any GPU manufacturer could be like, my card completely destroys you. Outside of maybe like the Voodoo 2, but in more recent times, this was the first time you could say that this card was significantly faster. In fact, if you take a look at these benchmarks here, at 1024 by 768, you can see how CPU limited we're going to get here in a sec. It was coming in at 38% faster than its NVIDIA competition. Then at 1280 by 1024, 48% faster. 1600 by 1200, 54% faster. This number keeps going up because we become more and more GPU limited as time goes on. Ironically enough, do you know how much ATI charged for this? Basically the exact same equivalent to the 8800 GTX or Ultra. This came out at only $399, which is only $100 more than their GeForce equivalent, that it's unbelievably faster than. Now, NVIDIA and ATI and AMD, they traded blows for years and years and years, and that kept prices reasonable again after the 8800 series. So they couldn't go too stupid with their prices for a very long time until the GeForce GTX Titan came out. Now, this card right here, for some reason, it was now okay to charge over $1,000 for a GPU. I was reading through a non-tech's review here and reading their conclusions, and ironically enough, we do have this statement. At best, at its very best, the AMD Radeon 7970 GE can match the Titan, just match it. That's pretty crazy considering this is a card that's supposed to be competing with a GTX 680, and it can actually match a Titan in certain cases, which now we know today it'll actually beat it in most cases. But anyway, even back then, AMD's card for $500, that's matching their $1,000 card. You know, that's pretty good, but, you know, this is a $1,000 card, and it's better in other scenarios. Regardless, what's really kind of funny here is this card right here, $1,000, they finally hit it. They hit that mark where they wanted to be this whole time, and they're still selling you crap. This is a cut-down version. That's right, they were selling you second-tier products at $1,000, and for some reason that was okay, because just a few months later they launched the Titan Black, which is the fully unlocked GK110 chip. This is the full chip, it's got full everything, this is it to the max, and the only reason why this card came out was because the 290X came out and stomped the regular Titan, and they had to bring this out. Without the 290X, you would never have had access to the fully unlocked chip. You probably would not have had a 780 Ti, and you would have just had the GTX 780, and then the Titan at $1,000. The cut down version, so they could sell these to the data center for a lot more money, and then still charge you $1,000 for, you know, the defective one. $1,000, you get the defective one. Doesn't this sound kind of familiar? Oh yeah, that's right. The RTX 2080 Ti came out at $1,000 to $1,500. We know it's typically around $1,200-$1,300 regularly for a decent one. But anyways, so you're getting this card for over $1,000, and this is the cut down version. This is the cut down defective model. This is the big boy model. This is what you should be getting for $1,000. Or just a couple of years ago, back in 2013, you did. You got the full version after AMD competed. When there's no competition, guess what happens to the full version of their GPUs? Now we're up to $2,500. Now, before you start making some crazy argument that doesn't make any logical sense, this is a TU-102 die. This is a TU-102 die. It's the exact same thing, just this one has full memory bandwidth and an appropriate amount of money for a $1,000 plus GPU, in my opinion, and all of its shader cores unlocked. This right here is the defective model that they're selling you, which I really find funny when everybody's like, well, you gotta buy the best. Well, I hope everybody who says that has one of these, or two of these, or three of these, or whatever, because if you don't have this card, you don't have the best, because NVIDIA doesn't sell you the best unless you want to pony up for it in the order of several thousands of dollars. And ironically enough, all of this started back in 2007, when NVIDIA finally had a winner, when they finally had a GPU that could take over the market for a generation. Actually, two. I mean, it was a good card. They did great. Can't really knock them for that. What I can knock them for is going, fuck it, let's double prices. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Because what was the last Titan? You know, the fully unlocked version, the Titan X little p. Oh yeah, which by the way, you had to buy the Titan X regular, and then they came out with the fully unlocked one later and replaced it. But anyway, that was $11.99, if I believe. That's about half the price of this, isn't it? So we got another doubling of prices for the absolute best that NVIDIA can produce. Great. So it's like 2007 all over again. Now, for all of you out there going, well, all businesses do that. They all charge absurd amounts of money. They don't do it like that. Most companies will gradually step you up a little bit here and there, extra, 10%, extra $100, something like that. If this card came out at $1,500, I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. Now, if this card came out, and let's say it was $7.99, actually available at $7.99, not like some fake price that doesn't really exist. If this was $7.99, $100 more than the 1080 Ti, I don't think too many people would have much of an issue with it. And that's how most companies that are intelligent base their prices. They will slowly, gradually increase them as time goes on. But see, it's all dependent on NVIDIA keeping market share. They have to stay in the lead at all times. Otherwise, everything that they worked for could go away. And that's the reason why I did this video right here. For anybody out there that thinks that AMD or Intel or anybody out there is not going to see what NVIDIA has done, they've literally doubled prices multiple times. They are the ones that are increasing the cost of graphics cards and graphics in the entire market. They are literally the only reason why that's happening. But if the market is stuck with NVIDIA products and pricing, why wouldn't other companies take advantage of that? Now, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. This sucks. It really, really does. But I'm trying to explain to you how screwed things really are because they can't go back. I mean, I guess they could, but they're really not. Not if NVIDIA can get away with this. And if AMD does launch their cards at a higher price point, say anywhere between $350 to $400, which I think that they'd be perfectly justified in releasing a card between $350 and $400 if it competes with a $500 or $600 NVIDIA card. I think that that's perfectly justified in my opinion. But anyways, once that happens, the market, that's where it's going to stay. And that's where those prices are going to land. Do you think Intel is going to sell their stuff even cheaper? Maybe like a little bit to try to gain some market share. But that's the way it's going to go. And it's just going to continue to go up. And that's the main reason why the RTX series sucks so much for the enthusiasts out there. Because of the massive, unbelievably massive price increase. So you might be looking at this going, oh, it's only a few $100s more. This is basically double the price of what it's replacing. This is literally double the price of what it's replacing. And I do want to remind everybody out there who thinks that every business just does this and they double prices all the time simply because. Does anybody remember the Radeon 5870? You know, the fastest GPU in the world for months and months and months and months till Fermi came out, the GTX 480, which while it was technically faster, it also lit your house on fire. So not exactly the best example of that. This came out at only $399. ATI or AMD. AMD technically owned ATI at that time, but it was still run by ATI and who knows how much of the marketing. Regardless, those guys decided to charge for the absolute best GPU in the world back in 2009, so we're talking 10 years ago, best GPU in the world, hands down, uncontested, $399 at launch. NVIDIA, 10 years later, absolute best GPU in the world, uncontested, $2,500. This is in 10 years. Going back to our inflation calculator just to see what $399 looks like in 2019 for those people that think, oh, it's just inflation. No, that would only bring it up to $475. Now, I'll give it to you. This is a crazy good price, and I can't believe that they sold this thing that cheap. But that's what I'm talking about. Why would AMD do this again to themselves? All they're doing is they're cutting their own legs off by selling their graphics cards cheaper. If they start selling them at half the price, everybody out there thinks, oh, they'll gain market share. They've done that. It didn't work. The only thing that's going to work is to box NVIDIA out of the market, which is what they're doing. They're going to eliminate the low-end stuff and let NVIDIA price themselves essentially out of the mainstream gaming market, replace it with, like I said, APUs here in the near future, because Intel is going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be getting really powerful APUs from both AMD and Intel in the next 5 to 10 years. That's going to take care of most of the mainstream gamers, and then all they have to do is just have a few performance parts that compete with, you know, the $500-ish price point, which is about what we've seen from Navi thus far. And guess what? The good news is they're still going to be cheaper than NVIDIA's counterparts. How much cheaper? Well, whether it's $1 or $100, it doesn't matter. It's still less. And if its performance is on par, you should be thankful for that. Because if it weren't for AMD for the past decade, NVIDIA's prices might be double what they are today. You might be spending $2,000 on a 2080 Ti, and you might be spending $700 on an RTX 2060 level graphics card. And that's literally the future. If things keep going and doing what they've been doing, and we keep just kind of letting things go the way that they are, and not buying the GPU at the better price to performance, regardless of what brand it is, the market's going to continue to spiral out of control and essentially eliminate itself. Well, alrighty guys, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this. Did you know this thing even existed back then? I didn't. It was like the review that nobody read or something. I mean, it makes sense, the 8800 GTX being, like $200 less and being almost as fast. But we're kind of still at that same sort of point now, you know, just a little bit more performance, and they're charging umpteen thousands of dollars more for it. It's really, really crazy, But did you realize how expensive GPUs were even 12 years ago? It's really crazy. It really blows my mind. Even in the year 2000, they wanted $500 for the GeForce 2 Ultra. NVIDIA's always been shooting for the absolute top price, and they've really been trying to push graphics cards to a premium level where only certain people can buy them. It's literally only because of their competition, 3DFX, ATI, AMD, Matrox, all those guys that were able to beat NVIDIA for so long, and for so many generations, they were either competitive or beating them. That's the only reason why prices aren't 2 to 3 times what they are today. So it's really, really crazy when you look back and see how hard they were trying to push these prices up and for how long. Because I didn't realize how bad it really was. I didn't know the GeForce 2 was $500 in the year 2000, and I really didn't realize they wanted $829 for an 8800 Ultra in 2007. That's crazy. I thought the $650 was pretty nuts for the 8800 GTX, but I didn't even know the Ultra existed. If I did, I probably would have brought it up before now. But like I said, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. And if you like this video, please hit that like button, please subscribe, please share with friends. That really does help me out. That's really all I have for today, and I will catch you guys in the next video.